Much, Britta, and our last speaker of the panel is a great friend. Of course, he is a member of the advisory board of WIP, so actually he took into consideration that it might be a good activity what we do here, and hopefully next year we will be somewhere else in the world, and of course you are more than welcome to continue business as usual, as I would say. So before becoming Director General of the World Trade Organization in 2005, you have held very prominent positions both as public servant, Deputy Director in the Office of Prime Minister Pierre Mauroy, who just passed away, and actually was a great pro-passionate European. And if I should tell a story with him, he was the one who made it clear that we need a train between Paris and London. So actually it's good to have a type of memory who our pro-passionate European has been. Chef de Cabinet de President of Commission Jacques Delors, then European Commissioner for Trade, and in the private sector, member of the Executive Committee and Director of General at the Credit Lyonnais. So actually you have a real historical background, I would say. But why I remember you? Because you have been always a pro-passionate European and supportive for gender equality and women's rights. So my question is, from your long experience at national, European and of course international level, what is your view on the participation of women in decision making, especially in the management of the current crisis? How can an international organisation such as the WTO work towards a greater involvement of women in management and decision making? I know it's not an easy exercise, but you were always challenged during your life cycle.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I think we all know the starting point, and we all agree on the starting point, which is that participation of women in decision-making, in politics, business, civil society, is lower than what it should be. So I don't spend time on this. We all agree on this. And I think the only relevant downstream question is how do you change this? And that's the whole issue. And my experience, for what it's worth, and I'll say a word about the international system and a word about trade, as requested by the Chair, my experience is that there is one simple answer to that, which is affirmative action. That's the proper strategy. I know there can be a lot of intellectual, conceptual, academic, philosophical, political debates whether this is a good approach or not. I leave all this aside. I just look at facts, experience. That's the only method that works. And let me take the example of the international system. I've attended international conferences and notably G20 meetings year after year after year. If you look at the table of the G20, you have two women, one from Germany and one from Argentina, which is a sort of 10% minus proportion, because in reality there are more than 20 countries. If you look at on the side of those who attend the G20, and notably international organizations, which are World Bank, IMF, ILO, OECD, WTO, you have one woman from the IMF. And the proportion among international organizations, although low, is twice as high as it is at the table of governments. Now, what does this mean? This means that it's easier to get to top positions in international organizations than in countries. And why is it so? It is so precisely because the fact that there are more women at the top of positions in international organizations is the result of an affirmative action, and notably from the UN family, although all international organizations do not belong sort of administratively speaking, to the UN family. The reality is that there is a space for affirmative action. It has worked, and more to come as the leaders of international organizations are elected by governments, then this sort of commitment can work. And I think more to come, and in many ways it's a better system to move in this direction rather than try and find other ways which are more difficult to find in this diplomatic system. Second question by you, Zita. What about trade? And on this, my experience is very simple. It's much easier to promote, to connect, to engage women in trade than in finance. And why is it so? In many ways because trade is a power disseminator, whereas finance is a power concentrator. And as the issue of affirmative action has to do with power distribution, in many ways expanding trade, and that's the experience notably in many developing countries, is women empowering. Not least because in many cases this gives access by women to cash, which then becomes a family and a local instrument of power, and it works the other way, unfortunately, in the finance system, although we know that there are quite a lot of hope that in the macro finance area this might change. But on this, I would say the jury is still out. So on the financial side, if we want to improve the participation, the engagement and the power of women, let's go micro rather than macro. And finally, after having underlined what our colleague Thompson just said about what Europe just did, and I think this EU directive on women membership in boards is a big step forward. And by the way, you've done an extremely good timing because that was voted last week and this conference is taking this week. So you have something to put on the table, which is always good. It gives a bit of credibility to the European Union on this. My own sense is that what should be done, whether formally or informally, and that's what I practiced in my life the moment I started having, let's say, number one positions, is to make sure that your team, the one you decide on, and nobody else, is parity. And I think this simple rule is an enormous change because it allows for promotion of women. And that's my own experience. I've always had, the moment I had number one positions, teams with parity, and the result of this has been boosting the promotion of females and women I took in my teams. And I think this channel of promotion is something very concrete, very simple, and my proposal is that all leaders in international organizations take this commitment. The moment you do that, you will add one more bit of energy to this fight.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.